You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Betoota Advocate on Desert Rock FM. Welcome back to the Betoota Advocate radio show, recording here live in downtown Betoota. It's been a big couple of weeks, specifically within the Australian news cycle. We've had grand finals from both winter codes. Tomorrow we've got the Melbourne Cup, and obviously silly season is well and truly with us. But the day after the Melbourne Cup, the race that stops the nation, we have the race that either makes or breaks a nation, which is the US election. We've just had the Queensland election over the weekend, which delivered some surprising results in itself, and it looks like, as has the case been the last couple of years, pollsters aren't really on the mark in this day and age. So we're better off speaking to analysts, and that's why today both myself, Clancy Overall, and Errol Parker have a special guest in who can talk the talk. He knows the dark arts to a degree. We've had him on before during the presidential candidate race for the Democrats. The male model from Maitland, Charles Croucher, thank you for joining us.
The plus-size male model from Maitland.
Plus-size male model from Maitland. We did say that once in Canberra in front of your colleagues.
It was good.
Yeah.
Prime Minister enjoyed that.
Plus-size. That was a sledge. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here. Yeah,
we can still get you back up to all that.
That last time we chatted was only a few months in a pandemic ago. That was good.
Yeah.
Seems a long way from here.
Yeah. By the time you left LA, people were still social distancing alone. Like you didn't have to do the hotels.
No, we got in just before. So you could be in charge of your own social distancing. There were no roundy security guards or forced hotels. So
How it should be.
Exactly.
Didn't have to just sit there and pray, and they either say you're going to the Sheridan or you're going to the Travel Lodge. You don't get to choose.
Roll that dice.
First of all, we'll talk about Queensland. Queensland election. I guess you could call it an landslide to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Like, I mean, we're sitting here in Katter country, and obviously the Katters are pretty safe. But amazing to see, I think the thing out of Queensland is that One Nation vote collapsed, and it went back to Labor.
Yeah.
So this idea that all the One Nation comes from the right of the Liberal Party, or the Liberal, the LNP, were bleeding to the right, has been kind of disproven by that.
Well, yeah.
These might be disaffected coal miners. They might be people that were worried about jobs and worried about Labor drifting too far to the left. And what they saw was, I guess, a return to centre. And obviously the whole idea of One Nation kind of fell apart a bit. And they went back 5-1 back to Labor. That was really surprising.
Well, yeah, they had a 14% swing against them in central Queensland, which that was once, an engine room for One Nation. And of course, too, down on the Sunshine Coast, they had a 13% swing against them there. I don't think that was predicted, was it?
No, not at all. And I guess like what we're seeing emerging here, and we've now got 4 case studies, is the top issue might just be the top issue. Coronavirus might be the issue on most people's minds, and if you handle it well, you get re-elected. We saw it in the Northern Territory, to a lesser extent the ACT over in New Zealand with Jacinda and her big win, and then in Queensland this weekend. So that's a pretty decent sample size and a pretty good working theory at the moment. I mean, the big test for that will be Tuesday. In the US, Wednesday, our time, and what happens then when it comes to handling the coronavirus. So that might be the biggest thing at the moment.
Yeah, we'll delve into the US election in a sec. I just want to talk about what came to be on Saturday. You guys called it about 6 p.m., 7 p.m.?
Yeah, about that. It was pretty early.
Pretty early. Do you think there's a level of Queenslanders are more unpredictable during a slower news cycle? Because, I guess Pauline kind of got those numbers last time around off the back of ISIS.
Yeah, it's possibly true. You're right.
They were terrified of terrorism in central to North Queensland, so they voted in a local publican who made promises about deporting Muslim people. This time around, it's COVID. Might have filled that void, and that's a real day-to-day issue for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, and kids on the street aren't quite as threatening as terrorists on the street when you think about that, and that played up in Townsville.
The youth crime, that didn't land this year,
No.
did it?
No, but around that election, though, we did have some terrorists try to leave Queensland.
On the dinghy.
In a boat, yes. That's how
They fled.
Unappealing it is for for people cut from that cloth.
Yeah.
That's Queensland is so racist that even terrorists are trying to leave it.
Well, look, this time around, though, I guess the independents retained. They all retained.
Yeah.
So that One Nation bloke, where was he? He was up central Queensland way.
He had a pretty good result too.
And he's become a local politician. So he's not so much, they weren't even voting for Pauline there. And then you've got, obviously, the three KAP seats retained.
Very safe. Greens picked up one in South Brisbane.
Yeah. R.I.P. Trad.
Pour one out for friend of the podcast, Jackie Trad.
Yeah, don't trad on me.
And then the one independent as well who kept her seat.
Returning from Noosa. Now, there were a couple seats that swung that were quite surprising. Caloundra, particularly, which is, it's often hard to compare Queensland and New South Wales, but Caloundra would be quite similar to Cronulla. In terms of the aspirational, quiet Australians. You know, you've got to wonder how bad things would be in New South Wales for the Cronulla to swing at a state level.
To go back to Labor, yeah, exactly. A real surprise. But I think Queensland was just and for a state that swung so violently, went to Campbell, Newman, then straight back to Palaszczuk. It was all over the place. A couple in a row now where it's been pretty steady, pretty stable. Yeah. Labor's fending off the Greens in Brisbane and winning around the rest, and we still have that area where we have two pretty distinct states, right? The southeastern corner and everything else.
Yeah.
And that's once
Brisbane,
again...
As I say, Brisbane's closer to Melbourne than it is to Cairns. As the crow flies.
More ways than one at the moment. Electing Green MPs.
Well, Brisbane's a big city now. They're losing Labor strongholds to the Greens. That's when you become a city. They used to say it's when you have a cathedral, but now it's when you lose Labor seats to the Greens, you become a big city.
It's true. Happening in Sydney, happening in Melbourne. Going to see it in Darwin soon. We'll be really surprised.
The Darwin Greens. I reckon they'd be pretty wongy.
Or in Adelaide. You know, could you imagine how perverse you'd have to be a Greens candidate in fucking Adelaide? You'd have to be a real piece of work, I reckon.
Still in Lisbeth.
Still strolling to the Adelaide Oval.
One election, speaking of that rural-city divide, this election in the States is going to be interesting because Obama picked Biden as a VP to kind of pick up a lot of the Catholic working class and kind of that appellation from Pennsylvania down. As a Scranton man, Biden, born in Scranton, he's really running the Scranton angle this time around. But he did help Obama capture a lot of those disillusioned white voters. And, that was a strong turnout in those states that are now feel very safe for Trump.
Yeah, it's that Rust Belt, right? The Michigan, Pennsylvania, I guess to a lesser extent, Wisconsin, that's up near Illinois where Obama's from, but it was a real safety pick.
Yeah.
The familiar face, the very white teeth on the ticket in 2008, and it proved a bit of a masterstroke.
So they see both names?
Yep.
Because Ohio, as it stands now, it's on a knife edge.
Yeah.
Could go either way.
Yeah, and if Ohio falls, then it's going to be an early night for all of us, assuming the president concedes. Otherwise, it could be a very long and fought one. But the fact we're all fighting in Pennsylvania is incredible, given where it's been in the past.
And Trump has been doing a fair bit of last-minute campaigning in what you would imagine are very safe seats, very safe states.
Yeah, some strange ones. And even Biden heading up to Minnesota, they're defending their own territory a little bit. And Trump having to go to Texas, down to Georgia, and doing some of that's a real surprise. Even Florida, whilst it's a tipping point, it's one of those ones that I think Trump be pretty confident. Well, he has to be confident of winning. His road to the White House runs through there. So we've sort of narrowed in on those states, but what the president's doing is running through the tape, right? He's just 4 and 5 rallies a day.
Yeah.
He's doing that dancing thing at the moment, which is strange. We're pretty mask free. He
certainly survived coronavirus.
Yeah,
there's been a real change in his energy levels, I reckon. Like he's got to be on drugs. I mean, you can't be that old. You can't be that fucked. You can't be having that diet and be doing that.
Post-coronavirus diagnosis.
No, I'm sold on that theory. He's fucking up to his eyeballs on some sort of
stem cell-y kind of.
Not the old B12 shots that Margaret Thatcher used to have every morning.
On Novocaine or something like that.
You'll hear about it soon. He'll start talking about it. So it's going to be funny. And Pennsylvania's a great state in that, big city in Philadelphia and then some really regional areas. And it's one of those places where you do wonder how big mining and fracking is going to become in this election, because it's something that Trump's honed in on. Yeah. And it's been his message now for a couple of weeks. And one of the few messages that he's been on, and at least had some discipline about, has been that idea of Joe Biden wanting to get rid of fracking.
Yeah.
which I guess is jobs, but the job message can only work so many times, particularly when 4 years ago you came in on that job message.
Yeah.
And if people are unemployed, it's hard to fight that fight again.
Last time around, he came in on manufacturing.
Yeah.
And has he got the receipts? Has he done what he said he'd do for those people?
There are some, certainly not to the extent that he said he would.
Yeah.
I mean, you listen to those rallies and he's still talking about bringing the plants back. There are one or two places he did bring. But then again, that's the problem with fighting against Biden. Biden is the guy who was out there when the auto bailout in Michigan, like Detroit's right there in Michigan, and Biden was the one that oversaw that post-GFC. So he can fight that fight about the auto bailout as well. So it's the strangest thing about this election, and has been since we spoke last time at the end of the primaries, is that somehow this moment has arrived for Joe Biden. 77, almost 78-year-old Joe Biden is the guy that's emerged as the bright young face of the Democrats that can somehow be the almost the ideal candidate for this time.
Well, yeah, I read the other day that if Bill Clinton entered the race right now, he'd be the youngest
Still the youngest guy?
I think you said that last time you were on here when we were down to the last three. We had Warren, Bernie,
so cruel.
Biden, and Clinton's would be almost 10 years
Still
younger
there.
than most of them.
I mean, fuck, that's old, isn't it?
But no, also, you just got to look at Obama. Like, Obama would be 20 years younger than those last three. So
yeah, but Jesus Christ.
Is this just a symbolic of where we're at now in the kind of voting behaviour? Is this the last of the old white men? We're going to give them two old white men. Biden could die in office, then it's Kamala Harris, a Trinidadian Indian African American woman who would be 30 years younger than a lot of them. So it's the last dash. Do you think Biden is a better call than Bernie? Do you reckon Biden's going to cast a wider net than Bernie would have?
I do.
Yeah,
I do. I think Trump knew that as well. We used to travel around and we spoke to a lot of the Republicans, and they all said, we want Bernie.
Yeah.
Give us Bernie. It's a good target. Like, it would have been a great contest. And Bernie's full of energy. He's still, I got an email just before we came on, he's still campaigning. He's there fighting for Biden. But this is a much bigger net. The idea of healthcare, Bernie's healthcare plan might have played better in a pandemic. It's hard to tell. But that idea, and Biden said it a few times, he's like, who do you think you're running against? This is not, I'm not the puppet of communist, which is the wrong phrase for it, because we know, it's so far from what it is.
Yeah.
But
Turnbulism.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, what we call healthcare. But I think in hindsight, and the Trump people knew it, because he went to President Zelensky of Ukraine and said, "What dirt have you got on this bloke?" From 2 years out, the Trump team must have known something was coming with Biden. That's why they got impeached, trying to get rid of him.
Yeah.
And still trying to land a really effective attack line on him. The Sleepy Joe thing, I don't know if it's working, but he was Headwind Joe the other day, and he's been Creepy Joe a bit, for all the president's prowess. And he is one of the greatest negative campaiggners we've seen. He was so good with Crooked Hillary and so on message.
Crooked
and that message
Pocahontas was game over.
Well, you still think about it, right? When you hear Hillary Clinton, you still think Crooked Hillary.
Yeah.
As right or as wrong as it is, it's still what you think. And
but lock her up, Lion Ted.
Yep.
Pocahontas, I think, was his strongest. That cut off Elizabeth Warren at the knees.
He didn't really have one for Bernie Sanders. The crazy Bernie idea might have worked, but that was the other thing. So
I thought Weekend at Bernie's was probably going to get worked out. If Bernie came on, it would have been. And that's probably what's kind of protected Biden in a sense, that it really is. It looks like Weekend at Bernie's with Biden. But Bernie, that whole IP, that name is taken by the guy that didn't run.
IP.
Well, Bernie
selection.
Well, Bernie probably would have won if it wasn't for Elizabeth Warren hanging around.
Yeah, quite possibly. It's probably the thing we've forgotten because it got taken up so much by COVID. But that turnaround after Super Tuesday, or on Super Tuesday for Biden, he was dead and buried.
Yeah.
4 days before South Carolina, he comes out, wins South Carolina, and all of a sudden he's off to the races. Everyone fell in line. Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Beto O'Rourke, they all just 1, 2, 3 down the line for him. And lo and behold, he wins all those seats on Super Tuesday, and the race was over because it became the COVID election then, and Bernie lost his chance to come back. It's that part is so amazing that all happened to that guy that everyone's known. This isn't some bolt from the blue.
Yeah. Like Obama was.
Exactly. Yeah, or like Bill Clinton was, or all those. There's these rising stars. I mean, this is the guy that's been in front of their face for the whole time, and it's just amazing that he had this turnaround.
Presuming Biden wins, will he be the first kind of establishment Democrat since? Because you look back, it's like, as we just said, Obama came from nowhere. He was a populist Chicago lad. Then you've got
Clinton from the State House in Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas. And then Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter came
who
from
was
nowhere,
like
you're right.
Yeah.
Kennedy was the same. Yeah, you're right. It's
Yeah.
a first for a long time, since maybe FDR.
Which is wild because the narrative has been for Trump from the start is that the Democrats are establishment. Almost every president they've had has been an outsider to the system.
The Democrats have said we're going to own the brand. Here is the most establishment of establishment guys.
Let's just chug along, guys. Things status quo Joe.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's almost the campaign, right? Yeah. Everything back to normal. So it is amazing that that's how this has played out so far. And there obviously might be a big turn still to come on Wednesday, but we'll see.
Who do you think Trump's let down the most out of his base, or his multifaceted, multi-layered base?
Honestly, the people that took a chance on him that thought their lives were genuinely going to change.
Yeah.
And he sold a lot when he came in with that idea. And I think there's a lot of people right now that are looking around saying things may not necessarily be worse, but they're certainly not better.
Yeah. Well, he did. I mean, we probably joked about it last time we spoke, but he did say on the eve of the 2016 election at whatever rally he was at, he said, "Vote for me tomorrow, and I promise all your wildest dreams will come true." Which is a huge election promise.
The wild part happened. So I think those people, and that's the ones that have abandoned him too, that sort of suburbs.
Yep.
Not so much the MAGA crowd, the ones that will line up in the cold at a rally. They're all still pretty rusted on. They're going nowhere. But the suburban ones that took a chance, that perhaps weren't happy with the way things were, thought they deserved more, thought they could get more out of this guy, weren't happy with the establishment. And again, you can lean into that establishment title now. That's the reason they swung back. The reason they did in those midterms in 2018, and also the reason that the polls just haven't changed. We've seen so many times recently that polls can be wrong. But what has been surprising about this race is the polls have been so consistent. You watch that Hillary, the 16 race, and it was up and down, and Trump led with a month to go. Then Hillary had the...
So you're talking right into the right through the Democratic candidate race as well?
To an extent. Biden sort of had his crowd, and it didn't. But since it's narrowed to the two of them, it's just been that same distance. Biden by 10 nationally, Biden by 7, Biden by 8. It just stayed there. Whereas last time it fluctuated wildly up and down. But Hillary had that fainted and had pneumonia at the 9/11 thing, and then we had the Access Hollywood tape, and Comey's got the emails. And this time around, the world events have been so much bigger.
Yeah, well, the president got COVID. That was October's surprise. Yeah,
an impeachment, a pandemic, the president getting it, the rallies, the country was burning. And the polls have just chugged along at the same pace. It just seems everyone's either not paying attention, possibly, or have made up their minds. Which seems more likely.
So because there's a lot of postal votes this time around, and at the last election there was a really low turnout, we couldn't see a result of this election for weeks.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And one of the things we should be thankful for every day is the Australian Electoral Commission, because they just don't have that over there. No. Each state runs its own election. And so the election doesn't really finish until a candidate concedes.
Yeah.
That's when it's over. Can anyone see Donald Trump conceding if there's a doubt?
No.
So he needs to win on the day.
Who knows?
Yeah. Or otherwise, like what happened in 2000, where, that went down to the wire and Al Gore actually got more, like he got more votes, but then it ended up in the Supreme Court, which...
And Kavanaugh was there too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was around. Yeah. Jeb Bush was the governor in Florida at the time, and his brother was running. There was a whole lot of thing going on. Again, that election only finished when Al Gore called George Bush and conceded.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court made its ruling. Al Gore conceded. The race was over.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, then you got real trouble. And all of it, there's Axios had the story in the last couple of days about Trump preparing to just declare it on Wednesday night, come out, claim victory. Fight about the rest later.
I hope Joe's got a plan, because that's very likely.
They'll have lawyers. I promise you that.
Yeah.
And if this drags on, the closer you get to January...
The difference is Trump's going to be able to declare it in front of a room full of cheering people, and Biden's going to come out in front of 20 cars like he's been doing. Yeah. Delaware. Delaware, we did it.
There's the Joe Biden Rest Center in Delaware. It's good. Let's pull in the car rest center. It's good. Information, maps, McDonald's, that kind of thing.
Chips and gravy.
Yeah, it's good.
Now let's talk about the fun stuff. The possibility of Republican states swinging blue. I don't think there was this much chatter of that last election, and there probably wasn't. I mean, did Arizona ever swing under Obama?
No,
never.
Because that was John McCain.
John McCain. So, but even in 2012,
Romney carried it pretty comfortably.
Yeah. What are your thoughts there? I mean, we haven't actually made any predictions in this,
Not
which
yet.
is very clever of us.
Well, New Mexico is going to go blue, 100%.
New Mexico will go blue.
Again,
I think you're right.
yeah.
Colorado will stay blue. It's one that's drifted away. I think Arizona's a really interesting state.
Yeah.
A good state for Joe Biden generally.
Yeah.
Mike Kelly, the astronaut, is running for the Senate there. Gabby Gifford's husband. He's looks immoral to win that Senate seat, which is John McCain's old seat.
Yep.
Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife, has campaigned for Joe Biden.
Yep.
There's a whole host of Arizona sort of statesmen, people that have come out and supported Biden. I suspect Arizona will be one of the first to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michigan, you expect will go back. Wisconsin, Milwaukee's had a lot, and plus the
Yeah.
riots there. I suspect that will go back. That would be enough for Joe Biden to win, only just, but would be enough to win the Electoral College if that's what happens.
Yeah.
And then some pretty funny states like Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania. We know about.
They were all blue under Kennedy with LBJ. A lot of them.
That would make sense.
Yeah, LBJ was governor of Texas. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Texas is when you think of a Texan
Austin's
Republican.
getting bigger.
Austin's getting bigger.
Yeah.
Houston's getting bigger.
Yeah.
El Paso.
Live music's going to change that state forever.
Austin's a great city.
When you think Texan Republican, you don't necessarily think red cap MAGA, do you?
No, you don't.
You think
George
Wall
Bush,
Street
right?
Journal,
Yeah.
George Bush, yeah.
Bush,
Yeah.
Governor Abbott.
Yeah.
Just a rich, quiet old dude.
Yeah.
Oil.
Oil.
That's right.
Yeah.
Even Ted Cruz, like super Christian,
Yeah.
super oil, super rich, like Dallas.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feel. So
like
that's
not too far removed from Bill Clinton, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Arkansas is just next
Yeah,
door,
yeah.
so that all makes sense. If Texas goes, and I suspect that's a really long bow. Even if they've gotten
Yes.
within 2 points, that's the hardest 2 points in politics, trying to get Texas over the line. If Texas goes, then it's a day of reckoning for the Republicans. They're going to make some really big decisions about who the hell they are, because if you can't win Texas or California or New York or Pennsylvania or Florida, where are your votes coming from?
Well, I'm pretty sure
Youngstown,
that,
Ohio.
Yeah, that's right. There's only so many states in the middle that you can
pretty sure that Bill Clinton
Wyoming.
in '96 didn't even win Arkansas, but he flipped Louisiana and Alabama.
How did they go last time, Louisiana?
They're pretty red. That was
pretty
Louisiana
red.
during some pretty nasty days of David Duke, the old KKK guy. He was still running around down there, and I think Jesse Jackson was around for a while. That was a really strange couple of years down there. So, no, they're pretty safe. The old South, as it's known, that's all pretty safe red country.
Yeah.
If North Carolina goes, though, it's going to be big. There's a good Senate race in South Carolina. There's a lot of those. Georgia's a great, with Atlanta, huge African-American population. It's the one that's always threatened again, the one that I think Democrats have really eyed off for the last couple of elections and haven't quite got there.
There's a couple majority non-white cities in America. There's Baltimore, Atlanta, Florida nowadays as well, and a couple of those ones.
to Miami, maybe.
Yeah,
But
those
even
ones.
Alabama, they've got there's some quite high African-American populations down there. They just haven't turned out with the race.
And do you think Biden has, like, more so than the Democrats could usually expect, Biden has the African American vote locked in just due to his
I suspect so. Yeah,
his time with
friendship
Obama.
His time with Obama, he's well known. Jim Clyburn endorsed him, who is a guy in South Carolina. He's the Democratic whip, a really important figure. And then I don't think you can also we can't thumb our nose at the fact that Kamala Harris is number 2 on the ticket, and that's significant. So I think he'd be pretty confident of a big turnout there.
Do you think the turnout's going to be bigger now that they've got the postal votes now, so more people don't have to leave their homes to vote, really?
Yeah, I think so. I also think that there's so much going on.
Yeah.
If the last 4 years, one way or another, hasn't inspired you to vote, when are you ever voting? When are you ever going to get out and vote if it's not now? So
those postal votes are, like, some states have had more postal votes than they had on election day last year.
Yeah, I think it's about
last term.
Yeah.
What do you think's motivating these people? Because you wouldn't imagine that with the rhetoric Trump's been throwing around about how he's not even going to count postal ballots, you don't imagine that his base would be mailing them in. They'd be waiting for the day.
you would think so, and certainly the polls are showing sort of 2-1 Republican of those that are intending to vote on election day. But you have to count the votes. You know, this idea of not counting the votes, it's not the way it works. And like certain states will do it. Like Florida counts early and counts those pre-poll votes. So I think this whole thing is seen in the prism of COVID, but also of the president.
Yeah.
You know, people are either very for him or very against him.
Yeah.
We used to say on the campaign, the key word was the E word. That was electability. You know, the Democrats all just wanted someone that could beat him, could beat Donald Trump, and they didn't know who it was. But that was their main target. Now the key word, the E word, is enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And while a lot of Democrats may not be that enthusiastic about Joe Biden, they certainly are about voting out Donald Trump.
And they even if they're not that enthusiastic, they're far more activated than they were with Hillary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to sit this one out like perhaps they did last time.
One thing you learn watching that Comey Rule TV show was that, and it was a prediction that was made by the FBI director's wife early on in the program, is that how men come out to vote against a woman with more force than women come out to vote in a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even I mean, you can see what's happening with the polling internally, that those suburban women, that's this big target market, right? The ones that everyone wants. And the president came out and said it when he was at the rally the day and said, suburban women, please like me.
I saw that.
I mean, talk about saying the quiet part out loud. Like that's obviously what the message is. That's what the
Please like
Purbans,
me.
the pollsters have got to him. And Kellyanne's telling him this is where we need to improve. So that's the battleground. Whether it would be more palatable having Kamala Harris number 2 on the ticket, whether that makes it easier, I don't know. Interesting that both Jill Biden and Melania Trump have been out doing their own events. Yeah. The one person we haven't seen a lot of, which surprised me, is Michelle Obama. Apart from during the convention, she's such a powerful force, and I don't think there's a more liked figure in America than her. So
where does she land, though? Where does she land as a as an inspiring figure? Is it in the suburbs or is it in the boardrooms?
That's where you could be right. Yeah. I'm not sure. I suspect it's the people like our mums.
Yeah. People who watched Oprah.
Yeah, exactly right. But we'll see. But clearly that's an area that Joe Biden is either doing well at or the president's doing badly at, because that's what the polling is saying. That's why he's saying that on stage.
Okay. So can you tell us, mind you, there's only one prediction we've made, which is New Mexico's going to swing. So.
New Mexico's going blue. You can put a pencil in California, if I reckon. Maybe Washington State.
Yeah. Where do you think we're heading with this, misinformation? It is different this time around.
Yep.
Facebook has done a bit. Twitter has done a bit to rein in. YouTube, not so much, but there was some of the shit that was on in your news feed this time 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Hillary's got AIDS. Hillary's got a secret lair of children sex ring underneath a pizza.
The Pope endorses Trump.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. 1 million people like this, and definitely 5 million read this. Yeah, where do you think all this energy is going to go? Because it's obviously gone dark, a lot of that kind of misinformation. We're talking about the Q, we can go there. But say the American electorate realises they don't suffer fools anymore and they're not voting on those kind of, anxious kind of conspiracies. Where does that energy go? Does it manifest itself in a bunch of spree shootings? Or
I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not. Certainly you're right about going dark. Facebook's made an effort, Twitter's made an effort, but there's also people can just publish their own. I wonder how many people have their own QAnon podcast or have their own. Like Alex Jones has a YouTube channel. You just tack onto that.
Yeah.
And it's just utter shit.
Yeah.
But if people are buying into it, then it's going to have an impact. I all this stuff about cabals that are harvesting children, and I figure here in Australia we don't quite buy into that shit, but I hope we don't anyway.
Is it fairly mainstream? Is that a worry? Is it?
Yeah. Well, it's becoming more mainstream, right?
Yeah.
And there are families that are fighting over it, and there are people that are in conflict with neighbours over it. And,
because we all remember, we've all had a cab driver that told us Kevin Rudd is like a Jesuit kind of puppet, and that's a late night cab conversation. This is in the suburbs?
It's a bit easier when the conspiracies were about Area 52, right? Or the conspiracy about aliens or something. That was a bit easier.
Yeah.
That's something. And I just wonder whether these people have always had these crazy theories. Now they can meet up and talk about it.
Yeah.
And now they have a place and found a home where on a Reddit thread somewhere they can discuss it and it can become more mainstream. We'll find out this week whether that stuff's landed or not. And clearly Russia, perhaps China, have worked out this is a good way of doing things.
Yeah.
And, there's certain members of the Australian Parliament that have taken that a bit far as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So The Bachelor.
Yeah, one of them. And so we'll see.
Yeah.
It could be that we've missed it.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's the one thing about this election is everyone is so snake bitten, so scared by what happened 4 years ago. Not the result, but the fact that everyone was wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone knew what was going to happen on election day, and we're all wrong.
Yeah.
So I think part of that reaction is to listen to every person's opinion and just think maybe they're right this time around. And part of that is to drastically overestimate the president's chances of re-election. And I think we're all doing both. But he still has a chance of being re-elected, so it may prove that that was right.
What do you think Trump is going to do with himself if he loses?
They're the two biggest questions, right?
What's he going to do next?
Yeah, what does he do next? What do the Republicans do next? And do the two of them align?
Trade advisor for the UK.
He and Nigel Farage.
Unpaid.
Certainly, Trump TV is a real opportunity and a real possibility. There's a big market there for him. Clearly, he has people that will watch, people that enjoy his message. I think he would admit he's most happy when he's doing that and can be in charge.
Yeah.
Trump TV would be.
I wouldn't be surprised if one of his early phone calls is to Governor Andrew Cuomo, who may become Attorney General Andrew Cuomo, because he's obviously got some problems that need to be sorted with taxes.
Yep.
And that will be like a really fascinating part of what happens if the president loses. And then the biggest question is, what do the Republicans do? Because that's what's been the most notable change of the last 4 years, is that this party of policy, the party of Reagan and Eisenhower and Abe Lincoln, has become this party of personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely behind Donald Trump. And it worked electorally, but if that only works until it stops working, right? That only works
Stop
until you
working in
lose.
Queensland on the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah.
And so then it becomes, well, Republicans, who are you?
Yeah.
You know, it was easy
And
to
they had a plan heading, I guess, out of Mitt Romney. They had a plan. You know, they went from McCain, who was the POW, which, you know, the ex-military Republican, you know, probably fiscally conservative, socially conservative, but socially centered conservative. And then that was the last of them. That's what they always looked like. And then you kind of go Mitt Romney and you've got, you know, money. And then they kind of had this new identity where they were a lot of Cuban, a lot
Marco
of
Rubio.
had a lot of kind of conservative Latino people tacking onto it. And then it just got hijacked.
Well, they can see the demographics as well, right? They can see the way America's moving. The white population, particularly the white farmers, the rural is shrinking.
Yeah.
And it's more multicultural and it's more diverse. And if you can't become that party, well, then you're in big trouble moving forward. And we talk about Texas. Like, you start losing Texas and California and New York, there's 100 electoral college votes done straight away. So you're behind 100. Where do you start? It's just too hard to fight back. And so that's what they've got to ask. They've got to ask themselves. And again, Donald Trump might win, and this is a question for 4 years later.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, though, well, are they Marco Rubio? Are they Nikki Haley? Like that old
we're
Reagan
talking next
conservative?
cab off the rank.
Yeah.
And
Are
who's
they Mike Pence?
Yeah.
Are we super Christian?
Yeah.
Midwest? Oh, shucks.
Yeah.
Like, that's the question. Or are they like Dan Crenshaw?
who was the African American Republican?
Herman Cain.
No. Pete Valet. No, the old mate.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Scott.
He put his hand up. Old mate put his hand up and spoke at the Republican convention this year, and everyone was he was a bit more moderate.
Tim Scott was he's a senator, Republican
right.
senator. I think they're only African American senator. He's a real star as well. So there's a few. Like there's obviously there's that wing of the party.
Yeah.
And it just depends whether the Trump wing or the party wing wins out. Post this again, the president might win, and you know everyone's okay. Yeah. And then if the president doesn't win, he has to ask, is it close enough that he runs in 4 years' time? Because it's happened before.
You can come back for a second term.
Grover Cleveland lost and came back and served a second term, served non-consecutive terms. Only happened once before. And he'll be exactly the age that Joe Biden is now. So
what is he going to be talking about in 4 years, sitting at home on the phone?
Yeah.
And just one last question we have to ask about the X factor in this election. That's Kanye West.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think he's going to have?
Kanye's birthday party.
If any.
I think the third party turnout of all descriptions.
Yep.
The Greens, Jill Stein.
Alliance, Constitution.
Yeah, the Libertarians,
Becoming
Jorgensen,
One Nation.
and Kanye West's birthday party will have a very small turnout this time around.
And Kanye in himself will probably have the smallest of those ones, because if you are inclined to vote for Kanye West, you're probably not inclined to line up and do it.
Yeah, it's funny to vote for Kanye. It's less funny on hour 6 of lining up to cast a vote that's not going to matter, so you can take a photo of your ballot or something.
Yeah. If you voted for Kanye, you've already done it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you might just tell everyone you did.
Yeah. I voted for. I mean, he's not even registered in half the states, so he's. No, I don't think he's
a non-event.
Don't think he's as big a concern as the Pittsburgh Gazette formerly endorsing Donald Trump today for the first time. endorsing a Republican since 1972.
Really?
So that's an interesting one. But yeah, let's just wait and see. Texas, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan. They might be the ones that decide it.
Yeah, my theory, Cheat's way of watching on Wednesday, obviously Watch 9's coverage will be on all day.
Yep.
But the Cheat's day of watching is there's 5 states. So Florida, Arizona, the Sun Belt, and then Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin.
Yep.
Win 3 of those 5, you've probably won the election.
Okay.
That's the way. So there's 45 other states, plus there's DC. It may play through those, but really those key 5 states, you win 3 out of those 5, either candidate likely to get 270 electoral college votes.
All right. Well, we'll be watching Charles Croucher on Channel 9. This is your Christmas.
It is, it's all my Christmases rolled in. I'm going to need like a lie down or to be hosed down or something. I seriously, I think after this weekend, I don't know, I'll just sort of stare into the void for a couple of months and then find a new hobby.
You'll just be looking at the Origin screen afterwards, just not even taking anything in.
There is one scenario where Origin's still on and the election's still on, and we have to do both.
Well, that has happened before too. The Lib spill when Rudd got back in, a Labor spill when Rudd got back in. There was
Origin night. You're right.
There was a lot of rugby league fans who were learning a lot about the inner workings of the Labor Party,
the machinations of the New South Wales right.
Well, thanks for joining us, Crouch.
Anytime. Thank you, fellas.
The male model from Maitland.